Hello. Well, it's been a long time no see, FPC family. So I wanted to record a little video for you guys, and first, so that you don't forget what I look like. For those of you who forgot who I am, my name is Italo. I'm the associate pastor of family and children ministries at Faith Presbyterian Church in Covington. Hello. How are you doing? So you're at home with your children and all the time now. And I wanted to send you a little video to encourage you. So that's what I'm doing. You are at home with your children all the time, and I know for some of you this feels both like a blessing and a curse. It feels like a blessing because you've wanted to spend more time with your children. You've wanted to spend more time with your family, and now you have it. You have a lot of time with your family now. You're working from home. Your children are at school, going to school from home. And so it feels like a blessing to some extent, but it also feels like a curse a little bit, doesn't it? Because you feel the pressure of having all this time and you're thinking, I should do something with this time. So you feel the pressure of having to be productive in some way, or what am I supposed to be doing? And it feels like a curse a little bit too. There is some irritation. You get all these people that haven't been together for a long time in this way, and then now they are together like that in this way. So there's some difficulties with that as well, and you feel the temptation of not doing anything, maybe just letting things be the way they always were. So there's this balance you're trying to strike in this time that you're at home with your children, and I want to help you. I want to help you think through this time, and in particular I want to help you think through it. How is it that you might influence your children during this time? How is it that you might influence your children during this time? Look, at the end of this video, there will not be another activity for you to do. There's nothing to do at the end of this video. This is not as, okay, go do this other thing. I know you're probably already too busy just trying to live through this COVID-19, through this pandemic crisis. But the thing about a pandemic like this is that it brings to the forefront of your mind these big questions of life, big questions of life. Now, what are big questions of life? Big questions of life are questions like, is there a God? And if there is a God, is he in control of this pandemic? Does a pandemic like this have a purpose? How do I decide in a time like this what is right and what is wrong? These are big questions of life. What is another one? Where did viruses come from? Did they really come from Wuhan, China, or is there someone else somewhere else? Like in the beginning of viruses, where did they come from? Do they have a purpose as well? Why do they exist? Why do viruses exist? Uh, and this is probably my personal favorite. Is this the end of the world? These are big questions of life. They aren't small questions as what am I going to eat for breakfast, although this might become a big question of life in the future. But these are questions of large significance in your life, of ultimate significance in your life. And a pandemic tends to bring those questions to the forefront. So the way you answer these big questions of life reflects your worldview. It reflects the way you see the world. The way you answer these big questions of life influences everything you do. However you answer these questions of life, you are also going to act in accordance with these questions of life. And the way you answer these big questions of life is very much likely going to be the way your children are going to answer these big questions of life. So your worldview influences the worldview of your children. You already influence their worldview all the time, but now in a special circumstance, you're spending a lot more time with your children, a lot more time with them. So uh, uh, as we get older, when we were children, we thought like children, but as we get older, life becomes more complex. The pressures of life start to mount up, the weight of life increases. These big questions of life start to come at us when we get older. And then the question is this: can your worldview, can the way that you answer these big questions of life support the weight of the entire world? Do you have a worldview that's strong enough, that's going to support the weight of even a pandemic? So watch this little video because it illustrates this point that I'm trying to make. Watch this.
A weak base for a culture or an individual can only stand when the pressures are not too great. As an illustration, let us take this bridge. The Romans built many little humpback bridges like this over the streams of Europe. People and wagons went over them safely for centuries, for 2 millennia. But now, if someone would drive a heavily loaded truck over these, they would break. It is this way with the lives and value systems of individuals and cultures. If they have nothing stronger to build upon than their own finiteness, their own limitedness, they can stand if the pressures are not too great. But as the pressures mount, if they do not have a sufficient base, they crash, just as these Roman bridges would crash if someone drove over them with a modern 10-ton truck. Culture and the freedoms of men are fragile. If there's not a sufficient base, it only takes time, and often not a great deal of time, before there is a collapse.
So that was Francis Schaeffer. Francis Schaeffer, a beloved theologian and philosopher. And what he was saying is this: sometimes there's things that happen in life that have to go through your worldview bridge. And a pandemic can be like a 10-ton truck. And I want you and your children to have a worldview that's strong enough to support not only the weight of a pandemic, but the weight of the entire universe going over that bridge. I want you to have a worldview strong enough that can last more than a few hundred years. I want you to have a worldview strong enough that can support the weight of any big question of life. That's what I want. And your children might not be asking questions about the pandemic now, but when they grow older, their life is going to increase in complexity as well. And when they're older, are they going to have a worldview that's strong enough for the world? Or are they going to have to trade it or be searching for a worldview that explains reality to them better? In other words, are they going to have a worldview that's going to collapse when they're older? Or are they going to have a worldview that's going to remain? And your worldview is what influences their worldview the most. Now, I am your pastor. So what I want you to have and what I want you to influence your children with is a biblical worldview, a worldview that comes from the Bible. I'm convinced that the Bible is the only source of knowledge that has all the answers for these big questions of life. I'm convinced that the biblical worldview, the way of looking at the world like the Bible, not only does it reflect reality, but it is true because it does reflect reality, but it also is strong enough to sustain the weight of the entire world. So I want you to have a biblical worldview, and a pandemic gives us an opportunity to think through these big questions of life. So in the next several days and following weeks, maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm still working out the kinks of my skills with recording videos. I will post videos to help you think through these big questions of life, but not only for you to know how to answer them from the Bible, but also giving you ideas, ways as to just how in your everyday life, just as you spend time with your family, how may you start influencing the way your children answer these big questions of life as well. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for more videos. It's good seeing you. Well, I didn't see you, but it's good to be back. I'll talk to you guys later.